dear friends. It's Carly, and welcome to another episode of the I Learned podcast. This is our 50th episode. I cannot, I can hardly believe that. I cannot hardly believe that. It definitely has gone by fast, way faster than I ever thought it would. I don't know how long I thought it was going to take me to make 50 episodes. I don't know that I necessarily thought about that, but it definitely was longer than this. So that's really exciting. And as I was sitting there this morning, I, kind of like just giving thanks for the first 49 episodes and giving thanks to myself for powering through the awkward moments at the beginning and still sometimes. Um, and as I'm giving thanks for this 50th episode, the 500th episode flashed in my brain, and then the 5,000th episode. And then I was like, man, how long would it take me to make 5,000 episodes? And I was like, well, I mean, who cares? Who cares? It's so fun to make episodes. And I could definitely see there being 5,000 of these episodes someday, because this umbrella of I learned things that I've learned along my path, I love it so much, mostly because it feels like something that I could continue to tell that story of stuff that I've learned for the rest of my life. I genuinely enjoy telling the story, and this platform makes it easier than I could have ever dreamed. Plus, my readiness is there, my confidence is there, my self-esteem, my self-love, my self-acceptance, my tools in my toolbox, all of that has come into place to support me as I do this. And I was reading through one of the blog posts that Maddie wrote that's coming up here in a week or two, and it takes me back to episode 6, and it was talking about like my mind went a complete blank, like totally blank. Does that ever happen to you? If you guys have been listening to any of these 50 episodes, you probably already know that Carly's mind will just like stop at one point. It's like somebody just like turns the faucet off and it just like, we're done. And that line of thought, it just dries right up. And that used to really frustrate me. That used to really make me feel insecure, and it made me embarrassed that I couldn't hold on to my thoughts better. Like, I think it was my dad who called me an airhead a lot when I was little, which is funny. I never really put that together because my mom told me all the time how smart I was and how intelligent I was. And she taught me things and made me worksheets and like all summer long drawing out math worksheets and spelling words and all kinds of things that she's making up to homeschool me in the off season because I loved school so much. And yet my dad, he had very little patience for my airheadedness. Where sometimes it takes me a second to start talking because I like to think about things before I say what I think, and that once I get going, it's very easy for me to lose my train of thought, mostly because when that happens, something else occurs to me, and without meaning to, that other thing that occurs to me, I just start chasing off after it in my mind. And then it's like, okay, but now there's no more words to continue telling that story that now there's people listening and you probably should continue telling the rest of that story. And so I spent a lot of time like kind of beating up on myself that this is how my brain is wired, that my thoughts can be so random and that there's really not a whole lot of coherence, that there's huge leaps between thoughts, and that my train of thought, quote unquote, sometimes they're just so short and that they dry up out of nowhere. You think you got a good thing going, like, oh man, this is so good, I'm going to tell the story. And then your mind just goes totally blank. Happens to me all the time. And honestly, it's been one of my favorite things to practice my self-love with, because now when it happens, I've learned to just laugh at myself that, yep, that's how my brain works. Like that's just how it is. And it really does give me a sense of peace. Like none of us are perfect. We all have those things about ourselves that we wish were more perfect. And probably somebody up close to us at some point helped exaggerate that we don't like that about ourselves. Like how my dad called me an airhead, that's a reflection of my own insecurity around this way that my thoughts don't seem to make a whole lot of sense sometimes. Like it can be really difficult for me to pull my thoughts together. I mean, that's honestly why the clarity that has produced these 50 episodes, it's like basically a freaking miracle because I mean, historically, like I lose my train of thought. I get halfway through a point and I jump to the next point, and that's why I love to think inside my mind and journal where I don't have to finish my points. I can write as much of it as I want, and then if I jump to something else, I mean, there's half finished sentences and on to the next thing everywhere in my journal. Nobody else could try to read that. I'm not worried about anybody finding it. They'd never be able to make sense of it. But yeah, it's like that. It's like this thing that really bugged me about myself and sometimes bugged other people, it turned out to be a really nice example as it unfolded. It was like a metric. As I built my self-love, I was nicer and nicer and nicer to myself when I would lose my train of thought. Until now, I mean, it probably aggravates me a little bit, like a tiny little bit, just because like I mean, I start telling the story because it sounds really interesting and it's fun point to make or whatever. And I'm telling it for a reason, basically. And so then to lose my train of thought, I mean, I want to hear it too. I want to see where that was going to go too. But I mean, that's not how my brain works. And another way that I've practiced making sense out of that, and I think this probably comes from Abraham, is to trust that everything is always working out for me. Everything is always working out for me. I've spent 5 years wrapping my mind around what that means. Like, really suspend everything else and point your focus wholeheartedly towards the belief everything is always working out for me. Do you believe it? Do you believe that that's true? Do you believe that that's true for all of us all the time? That everything that ever happens to us is for our highest good? That, like yesterday, I'm on my way back from Topeka, and in North Topeka, it's like on a 2-lane, 65-mile-an-hour highway. And I happen to be kind of right next to this semi. I'm in the right lane, he's in the left lane. And all of a sudden, he turns on his blinker and he's coming over, and I'm right there, and I lay on my horn in my little car, which is like me, and he doesn't stop. And thank goodness there was a shoulder right there that I could like go merge right as he was coming at me. And I just kind of slammed on my brakes, and there was also an exit right there. So I took that exit and got over on the shoulder of the exit and was at a full stop, like trying to catch my breath. And when I finally like came to, like out of shock for a second, I look over, and the exit was the exit for this, it's called Skinner's Garden Center, I think, in North Topeka. And I've seen it a million times. I've driven past it my entire life. It looks really, really pretty in there. And I've never taken the time to stop. I always see it as I go by, and I never like plan to go there. And it's always an afterthought, and I'm passing it at 65 miles an hour. And I'm like, oh yeah, next time I should stop there. Never done it. And so I'm sitting like on the side of, the shoulder of the off ramp right there next to this garden center. And I decide like, yeah, I think that would be nice. I'm going to take 5 minutes and I'm going to just walk around this garden center. I'm going to look at the plants. I'm going to catch my breath, chillax. And it was so pretty, so beautiful. I have my eye on a monstera plant there. I might go back and get it here pretty soon. I didn't splurge for it. I have like 85 houseplants. I'm trying to control myself. But I'll probably end up with that plant. So anywho, rather than like chasing down this, I don't know, at least oblivious semi-truck driver who like tried to run me off the road, instead of chasing him down in rage, I took it as an opportunity for my highest good, for my own enjoyment, to take a stroll around this garden center. And it was absolutely lovely. Like I said, I spent like 5 minutes. I got back in my car and I went the 25 minutes home. And I don't, in the moment, my gut reaction was like I said, shock, fear, self-preservation, like irritation that he's putting me in danger, but also even more dominantly than that, it's gratitude. It's gratitude for the nice shoulder that was there. It's gratitude that I saw his blinker. I wasn't like on my phone or something like that, which I don't normally do, but it's been known to happen. So I saw his blinker. I saw him do the whole entire thing. I was aware and alert in that moment. There was a nice shoulder for me to merge onto. There was a nice exit that was clear. There was really nobody right behind me, which is why he thought it was clear for him to merge over in the first place. So yeah, there was room for me to go. There was a space there where I could go and catch my breath and recenter myself in a peaceful surrounding. A place that I've been meaning to rendezvous with basically my whole entire life. And now this guy runs me off the road right in their front yard. So I'm like, okay, that sounds okay. Guess I'll go in there. But it's like that. It's like, how do you want to look at the circumstance? Did you get run off the road and now you're fucking pissed? Or did you get run off the road and now you're having this experience that you've wanted to have your whole entire life in this beautiful setting that rendezvous with your passion for plants and nature and beauty and all of these different things coming together? It's the same story, it's the same narrative, it's the same players, it's the same exact unfolding, but like, how do you want to look at it? Well, how do I want to look at it? I want to be happy. I want to feel good. That's my dominant intention. Like I threw out there the other day in the episode that Abraham says, like, would you rather be right or would you rather feel good? And I think I proved to myself that, as soon as I was like back into like, pretty confident that I had survived the run-in, I was basically back into a positive mindset. I was excited for this opportunity to stop and explore. And I knew that I would go back along my way and that I would continue to be guided to my own highest good. And that doesn't always look like somebody's not going to run you off the road. It looks like nothing happened to me. Somebody tried to run me off the road and nothing happened to me or my car. And I got a trip to a garden center out of it, which is, always a win. So that is beautiful. I think it's a beautiful demonstration of what's possible when you train your perspective on purpose towards positivity day after day, year after year. That positivity becomes dominant such that you don't even have to try. It's just your default response is to start finding the silver lining, start pulling it. What do I appreciate about this situation? And like you see, like those things weren't hard to find. It's very easy to tell a story about this was good and this was good and this was good and this was good. And yeah, I got run off the road, but no, this was good and this was good and this was good. And it's whatever story we want to tell. And I love getting to tell this story from this mindset that I've been practicing and get to share the tools and resources and everything that has helped me get here. Everything that has helped me practice this and learn it for myself. I mean, on this podcast, not just this episode, but really all of them, my goal is to like open my arsenal of everything that I have. Oh, I give it out. I give it all. There's no secrets. There's no like, I keep this one teacher to myself because they got the real knowledge. No, I give you everything. And I love that. I love sharing knowledge. For those of you that are into astrology, my Venus is in my second house in Gemini. So really like me giving someone something that means something, most likely it's going to be knowledge. I'm going to try to teach them something, which it comes so naturally to me, but not everybody wants to be taught something. So, you have to go through all of that. But it really is my love language to teach and to share resources and knowledge and things that have empowered me to put them out there in a way where other people can scoop them up and empower themselves with it. Yeah, talk about exactly what I'm here for. So I love this podcast. I love these first 50 episodes, and I cannot wait to see what the next 50, the next 500, however many are coming. I am here. I'm here for it. I'm all in. So I have some really fun things to share, and I'm super excited. The first one is another tarot reading. And I've been really into this lately. Apparently, I've included tarot readings in several episodes. And really, it's such a fun tool to play with. Tarot first came to me through a friend. She introduced me to a lot of things, actually. And she was gifted a tarot deck by her aunt and didn't ever, I don't even think she opened it. And then she had an illness and was bedridden for a couple years. And so there was very little that she could do, that she would have the physical energy to do. And so during that time, she pulls out her tarot cards. And I mean, all you need for tarot cards is a question. And if you want to shuffle them, however you can shuffle them, and then pick out one of the cards or a couple of the cards or whatever. And then, most of the tarot decks come with a book, so you can just open the book to that particular card. And like I read the description, very rarely do I interpret the cards without reading the book description. I don't claim to be a tarot professional at all. I just really enjoy the messages and the timeliness of the messages, and sometimes the repetitiveness of the messages. If you have been paying along, you've heard me talk in 2 different episodes recently about the Devil card, Major Arcana 15, the Devil, which doesn't actually refer to the devil. It talks about temptation and whether or not you're living your soul's path, or are you getting off in earthly desires where, it's just... And even that makes it sound like, well, we're not allowed to do that, that we have to take it to this extreme where we can't possibly be tempted. We can't possibly indulge ourselves into things that don't seem to have any purpose or value, which, that's not at all what I follow in my own practice. But it does talk about getting sucked into things such that it overtakes your life. Like the difference between, I don't know, let's see if I have an example. Like, let's say somebody tries a drug one time. That is bound to happen. Like, that to me doesn't sound like the devil card. It sounds like natural exploration. Like, there are lots and lots and lots of experiences out there that people generally like to learn lessons for themselves. Like, rather than just taking somebody else's word for it, they like to have the physical experience for themselves. So there are lots of things where you can try something and that's not necessarily going to wreck your life at all. The problem is when we start substituting something outside of ourselves for the love that we should be sourcing inside of ourselves. Like, we should be connecting within with our inner being or our own soul, our inner self, finding our energy through that means, rather than going outside to find this external source. And really the whole point is that 2 things. 1, you're missing out on what your soul wants you to be doing in lieu of you seeking this external source. And 2, that it's so easy to get wrapped up in those external sources. Like I talked the other day about codependent relationships, where it's so delicious and it's so like physical and tangible and real, and you can hear them and you can see them and you can it's just so powerful, the experience, and it can be addictive. And when you get addicted, now you've lost your power, because you need that thing in order to feel good. And if that thing isn't there, or if in a codependent relationship, like if that person isn't there, like they're unavailable, or if they have a bad day of their own, now like all of that tidal wave of everything, like you've enmeshed yourself, you've completely combined yourself with this external thing, and you've given over all of your power to it. And again, going back to the first thing, if that's what you've done, you can't be doing what your soul wants you to do at the same time that you're doing all of that. So none of it's bad, none of it's wrong, none of it ever is like too far gone. If you're alive, you can head back in the other direction of like letting go of those external sources and focusing back into yourself and merging with your soul and that purpose. But getting stuck in those addictions, it just is one of those things that like it eats up a lot of time, you know, like, and basically our spiritual guidance, our emotional guidance, the universe, however you want to look at it, is letting us know that there that with that card, when that card shows up in the reading, there's something that is like sapping your power. You're giving your power over to something, and you should be aware of that, that you're doing that. And so often that kind of stuff is so subconscious, it's so normal that we don't even catch ourselves doing it. And so I drew that devil card a few times ago. I drew it again whenever that was, in the most recent episode I talked about it. Well, then yesterday I drew a card that says, like, okay, so I want to better understand how to make this day as good as it possibly can be. That's basically what I asked my tarot deck. And I shuffle, and I go straight to the card I want, and I flip it over, and it is the devil card. There's freaking 78 cards in a tarot deck, and I've now drawn this same major arcana card 3 different times in like a week. And I'm like, okay, so this is fascinating, because clearly there's something here that I'm meant to process. And yada, 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 the bottom line, the end of it, where I got to was basically the kind of exactly like I talked about on the last episode. It's all coming back to me now. The episode Second Nature, where I talked about like that programming that happens because we're around other people and we're very smart and we learn how to survive. We learn how to adapt. We learn how to, like, for example, if there's a child and he lives in a household where the father is an abusive alcoholic, he learns very quickly, without anybody teaching it to him, he learns through his own observation that when daddy starts drinking, I'm going to just go to my room because it's never going to go well. He gets mean, he yells at me, he might hit me. Like, they learn that as soon as that first drink starts, they go away because they know everything that's going to unfold after that. So it's like that. It's like we get programmed with knowledge without ever really even specifically being taught it. And that knowledge can get in our way just as much as like shooting up with drugs. That programming that we are basically oblivious to because we've lived with it our whole entire lives, it's our own normal. We fall into that place of just, that's how it's always been, and we don't really question the way we operate because that's just how it's always been, and that's how mom did it, and that's how my family is. Like, we're just negative or whatever. Like, I think I've said that before, and that's just so not true. That's that second nature. That's what we're taught when we get here, and all the while we still have our first nature. We still have our individual innate essence, our soul that is leaning towards the life that our soul came to live. We have that going on inside of us all the time. And when we feel ourselves leaning away from our life, like when we're wanting to retreat, when we're feeling run down or burn out, that's a signal that, yeah, we're living from a place of our programming and not what our soul actually wants from us. And that's why we feel tired. So this is all things that I've learned, all kind of my own hodgepodge philosophy that is from a bunch of different sources, one little piece from basically everyone I've ever met, and just fit it together in a way that feels really good to me. It feels good to believe that it works this way because it puts the power inside of each of us as far as how do we want to feel. You got run off the road. How do you want to feel about it? And I'm here to tell you that it's possible to feel good about just about anything, because when we trust that everything is always working out for us, that everything is connected and everything is unfolding for the highest good of all that is, that sometimes there are even harsh things that have to happen to set up good things that can happen, that it's all for the highest good. It's all for the expansion of the universe, and we signed up for it. That's a good one. That's a fun one to think about, is that we signed up for this. Um, so tarot. I think that's where I started. I was kind of rambling off in a direction where I was losing what I was even trying to say. Um, but I drew a tarot spread this morning and basically opened up my energy and requested in a very open space of what can I put? What cards can I share such that it will have the greatest impact for the highest good at this time? What can I put into this 50th episode? And I drew 3 cards. And so I am going to read them, out of the Lightseers Tarot book. I absolutely love this deck. If you go to my Instagram, you can see all the pictures of all the tarot spreads that I've included lately. And I will get this one up there as well. So I am going to read out of the book and may riff off of that at the end. We shall see. The first card is Major Arcana 3, the Empress. The keywords are the divine feminine, prolific creativity, fertility, motherhood, unity, the goddess, sensuality, nurturing, abundance, empathy, unconditional love, unification of mind, body, and spirit. This Gaian Empress radiates fertile energy, positive outcomes, and unconditional love. This flourishing, creative energy is of the earth, so bring your dreams from the ethereal realms and ground them, share them, birth them. Her bountiful abundance is always available to you, and she reminds you to find her regenerative beauty everywhere. You are entering a time of profound healing and blessings, and if you're feeling any lack of inspiration or possibilities, seek to heal your physical temple and to nourish your soul by embodying her shining creative essence. Continue to move calmly and gracefully in the direction of that which whispers yes. This card often affirms that you are on the right track, so keep growing, beautiful seer, and work with the nature of your situation instead of against it. I am ready to give birth to my abundantly rich future. I love that. And this whole, like, the divine feminine energy of this card always pulls me back to the concept of the inner mother, where we all have that energy flowing through us to some extent, and that ability to nurture ourselves and to soothe ourselves and to care for ourselves and to applaud for ourselves and to support ourselves and to cheer for ourselves and to advocate for ourselves. We have the power to do all of those things, and it's only ever a matter of, are you doing it or not? Do you believe that you deserve your own love? Is basically what it comes down to. And this divine feminine energy, it mentions unconditional love a couple of times, because you absolutely do. You absolutely do deserve your own love, and so much more, that basically by your very nature, by your very existence, you deserve love. We all do. All of us. There's no bad person on this planet. There's no person on the planet who doesn't deserve the unconditional love of the universe. And we are the only ones who ever pinch ourselves off. When we say, oh, that person's on death row for murder, they don't deserve it. Well, they do. And now you're not in it because you're arguing about whether or not they should have it. So it's like that. It's like you accept yours and you let everybody else worry about theirs, and life moves on. So this one, it really is a matter of just accepting that it's already there. There's really nothing to do besides soften into it and let yourself have it. Yeah. The other day I was in a session and somebody was like, okay, so I should work on blah, 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 blah. And I was like, not really, like, don't necessarily work on it. Set yourself free to it. Let yourself have it. There's such a different mindset there. There's a mindset shift that says, I deserve this. I'm worthy of this. It's mine, and I can let myself have it if I want to. So this Empress energy, yes, a beautiful, beautiful part of this. The second card is the Two of Wands. The keywords are planning your future, making progress, activation, possibilities, the choice between your comfort zone and new adventures. You need to make a choice to really do that thing you want to do or not. You can dream it and envision it, or you can begin to live it. Planning and imagining can have us feeling like the observers of a dream, and our action is the only way to bring that dream to life. It's time to choose between the wand that's cozily rooted in the place you already know, or the one that leans into exciting new possibilities. Take a deep breath before take a deep breath because self-initiated change can be scary. The only way to take strides towards your goal is to make your move. Learn that thing, call that contact, make that decision. Non-action won't get you there and will likely have you feeling the angst of dreaming the dream instead of walking the talk. Use the fire energy of the wands to initiate your shift. The world is filled with opportunities for adventure, and I welcome them into my life with planned action. I think that card basically speaks for itself. And the last one is the Eight of Pentacles. The keywords are mastering a skill, an expert, a craftsman, the Meraki you put into your work, methodical progress, patience and determination, and soul purpose. Patience and determination are the best ways to ensure your success. Mastering this skill takes time and perseverance, and shortcuts are not the best path forward as you build your experience. Remain dedicated to excellence and to developing your unique form. Study, practice, improve, and thrive. Put your Meraki, P.S. I have no idea if I'm saying that right, but it's in italics, so I know it's a specific thing. Put your Meraki, your love, your soul, and your energetic essence, is apparently what it means, into your work and bring it in a consistent, methodical way. Perfect your craft and imbue joy into the repetitive things that you find yourself doing. Find flow in the details, no matter what it is that you find yourself dedicated to. If you know it's time to move on to something more inspiring, find your plan to do so. Consistent action is called for, and often we feel blocked right before we expand into new levels. It's okay to be imperfect as you learn. As you become the master, find joy in self-improvement to help you get there. With loving determination, I persevere and I become the person I long to be. This card has always resonated with me. I feel like one of the main things that is repetitive in my message is daily self-care for your individual self. It's something that I advocate for every single individual on this planet. Myself first and foremost, because my self-care is the only self-care I can ever actually accomplish. And I really hope you go look at the picture on this card, because I absolutely kind of channeled the vibe of this card into the office that I built for myself last year. My desk looks so much like the desk that she's sitting at on this card, and it's got like her crystals here, and there's books, and there's a candle, and there's an aloe plant, and on and on and on of like her tools, her spiritual exploration tools of her trade and her craft. And she is good at her skills because she deliberately practices them. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I got going on. So that's all it takes. Like, it's not anything like, oh, I wasn't born with spiritual gifts. Like, no, like it just takes a little bit of time every day to tap into those and see them for yourself and choose to believe that they're there. So much of that comes back to our confidence. So that's where another repetitive thing in my message is self-love and self-acceptance and shadow work to reintegrate those pieces of ourselves that we've rejected along the way, that other people maybe reacted negatively to, or we just don't like them. Either way, we outcast pieces of ourselves, and the more that we have in the shadow, the harder it is to live a happy life. So, integrating those hard, painful emotions and learning from our guidance as much as we can, all of that gets so much easier when we practice it a little bit today and a little bit tomorrow and a little bit the next day. And we give ourselves grace through that process. We basically surrender to being the eternal student of our own life, of our own being, that we don't ever foolishly get into thinking like, well, now I know how it all works. Like, don't do that. It's only going to set you up for disappointment. To even think that you know yourself is to risk being blindsided by the next evolution of your being. And it's just easier to allow for the eternal unfolding and evolution of who you are. And every day, I'm a morning person, so I do mine in the morning. But every morning I show up to check in with myself and take note of any evolutions that have happened, any epiphanies or dots connecting or shifts in perspective that make things easier for me. I tend to write it all down, and while I'm at it, write several things that I'm grateful for in my life, things that I like about myself or my life. All of that trains me into a place where I love my life and I like myself for the first time ever. Doing this work, I was able to get to a place where I can legitimately say I like myself, I love myself, and it makes it so much easier. Like going back to the beginning of like losing your train of thought. Like when I lose my train of thought, I look at myself as someone that I love very dearly, that I have a lot of respect for, and that I'm very aware of my, I'm aware of both my superpowers and my limitations. And I don't beat up on myself because I know that I'm doing my best. I know that if I was meant to tell that story, I would have. Like I lost my train of thought because that wasn't the right story to be telling right now. I trust that it's all for my highest good, that the way that it unfolded instead of that was actually the way that it was meant to unfold. Like that guy running me off the road, I was meant to go to the garden center and I was meant to walk around it, and I was meant to have that seed planted because now I got that freaking Monastera plan in my head and I'm probably going to have to go back there soon. So, letting it unfold instead of needing to control exactly how it happens, it makes the ride a lot smoother. And that daily practice of checking in with ourselves and filling up our gas tank and, just constantly checking in and managing our own energy and taking responsibility for the fact that, I know I want to feel good, so I'm going to make sure that that happens. And the rest is what it is. And I definitely didn't have that ability before. I know for a fact that that's something that we can learn because I learned it. And I'm gonna stop here. I'm gonna pause and come back on a fresh recording and share one more piece that I am super, super duper excited to share. Okay, so I am back to talk about synesthesia. As you know from the title of the episode, that's what we're going to chat about. And if you've never heard of it, I am going to start clear at the beginning. If you have heard of it, I apologize. I am going to start clear at the beginning with what is synesthesia and like tell this whole story. Because it's been one of those pieces that has been truly fascinating in terms of figuring out like what is the purpose of life? Why are we here? Why are we made the way we're made? So synesthesia, and I am reading off of, let's see, this is an article on healthline.com. It's basically the same as the other definitions I've seen. And I could debate some verbiage in this, but I will save that. So what is synesthesia? Synesthesia is a neurological condition, meaning it's in your brain, in which information meant to stimulate one of your senses stimulates several of your senses. People who have synesthesia are called synesthetes. The word synesthesia comes from the Greek words synth, which means together, and esthesia, which means perception. So together perception. So basically, you have your senses wired together in a way that's somewhat abnormal. The reported figures that you can find on synesthesia and like how many people have synesthesia, I mean, what you see makes it seem really rare. Like sometimes it's like 5 to 6%, sometimes it's like 10%. But here's the thing, like I didn't even know that I had synesthesia or that there was a name for this thing that I had because I just thought it was normal. I just thought this is how I'm wired. I figured everybody was wired that way, that happened to everybody, that everybody could feel these things. And it was only through a conversation with my brothers, all 3 of them, I believe, at least 2 of them were there, and my grandma. And they do say that synesthesia is genetic, that it's passed through families. Whatever that means, you know, as you as you put that back into like spiritual terms, like if you want this ability, you need to manifest through this genetic line, this lineage, because this lineage contains this configuration that you're looking for, is kind of how I look at it. Like I wanted synesthesia. I wanted to be wired this way. And I found a way to do it by finding a genetic line that had that in it and come through that opening. I don't know if that's how it works. That's one guess. The other thing that I have pulled up are famous people with synesthesia. The first one on this list is Marilyn Monroe, and it says, there's a quote that says she has a displacement of the senses that others take drugs to find. It doesn't really describe like what her actual cross is. The next one though is Jimi Hendrix. There's tons of artists, like musicians, I guess, on this list. So Jimi Hendrix trusted his synesthesia. He liked to describe chords and harmonies as colors. He called the chord E7, I think that's flat 9, often referred to by guitarists as the Hendrix chord, as the purple chord, and used it to help form the verse of his song Purple Haze. So in his case, in Jimi Hendrix's case, he could hear a note and he would see a color. And so instead of necessarily going just on how everything sounds, he's also weaving these colors together in a way where he likes the way the song looks, because he likes the way the colors came together, not just how it sounds and how the notes came together. So that's one example. I have a few that I'm going to go through. So Stevie Wonder also has the form where sound appears as color. John Mayer also has that form where sound appears as color. And then Tilda Swinton, she has one where Tilda Swinton thinks in food. Since she was a child, the I Am Love actress has always associated a different edible item with the word she uses, though she is unsure why. She explained, the word is a sort of gravy. Table is a slightly dry cake. Tomato is not actually tomato, it's lemony. So like, I get that on a deep level, that like, you know, things are not always as they appear. And they've done, you know, there's lots of theorizing out there on like, why does this happen to people, yada, yada, yada. I think the bottom line is that when we're dealing with reproduction, there are mutations and all kinds of things all the time, and that this is a mutation, and that, you know, it's out there. It's just one more difference in how us humans all come to be. The form of synesthesia that I've found, which I guess back up as half step and say, I was on a website, this was back when I first found it, which I was like maybe 20, 25, 26. And I found where it was a list of like, these are the 150 some known forms of synesthesia. And basically that your guess is as good as ours if there are others. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I've had this my whole life. It's just the way my brain is wired. I figured everybody had it. Lots of people with synesthesia say that. They're like, I just thought this was the way everybody's mind worked. And it's usually only until they start comparing with others or they mention their synesthesia to others and others are like, no, that doesn't happen to me, that they start to figure out like, oh, this isn't just normal human. This is like me. I'm unique for processing it this way. And so there's tons, infinite, probably. I'm guessing that like, just like our brains are completely unique, our fingerprints, our DNA, all of that, I'm guessing that like each person who is affected by synesthesia, I'm guessing their version is unique to them, is how I'm thinking about it. Like, even if, multiple musicians have it where sound comes in and they see color, it might still manifest itself differently. Like, I know I've seen both where they can physically see like blocks of color in the air, like hanging in the air. They see like these notes like weaving together. So it's basically a hallucination at that point. Or I've also seen where it's like on the inside of their mind, where it's an internal process, but basically the same, that there's like a movie screen inside their mind and that the colors are showing up on that movie screen. So even within the same type, like sound to color, there could be different ways that it manifests. So all of that to say that the type that I've found that's closest related to mine is called mirror touch synesthesia. And the basic idea is that if I watch someone be touched, that I feel touched a lot, how they're being touched. And this manifests itself in lots of interesting ways, but mostly when it comes to pain, like when I see somebody in pain, it hurts me, like it physically hurts me. And my version is different than even what I've read about online, because a lot of mirror touch synesthetes, they did it one time where basically the lady grabbed somebody like on the arm and the synesthete felt like they got grabbed on the arm, and then she like, nudged them on the back and they felt like they got nudged on the back. It was like exactly where the touch had happened on that person. That's where they interpreted it. Mine doesn't work like that. Like, and which it makes it sound even crazier, which is great. Mine is like when I see somebody get hurt, it shoots this pain out of my knees. So the pain goes up my legs and down my legs, out of my knees. And it takes several seconds for it to subside. And then it does, it like subsides, it like fades out. And twice, I have seen somebody be so hurt so close to me that it also came out of my elbows and it went down my arms and up my arms, but that's only happened twice. And it like paralyzed my entire body. Did not feel good at all. It's very, very painful. I do not like it. Like, and I think mine is also different because it's not necessarily just sight that triggers it. Like if somebody's telling a story about a painful experience that they had and they're conveying their pain, even though it's not current, even though they're not being hurt right now, they're just telling the story of it and reliving it. I can have the knee pain shooting out of my knees just by listening to their story. So there are so many times when, oh my goodness, I think my mom especially does this to me, where she'll be telling me this horrible story and then she's like, here, look at this cut and look at this bruise, and then I'm like, stop it, no, it hurts, like no, and she like is like even more forceful of telling me her story. So I really don't like listening to physically painful stories when it's real, when it's like somebody actually got hurt. I don't want to know about it because it hurts me too. And it is so fascinating to see how that changes my life. Like how, I mean, it's just like, for me, what it feels like is like just another facet to my empathy, where I don't just feel emotional pain on behalf of others, that I also feel physical pain on behalf of others. And that is, again, I thought everybody had it. I thought that when you see somebody, like probably one of the worst ones, one of the times it came out of my elbows. I got onto a crowded elevator at the software company where I worked, and there was a gentleman in there with a cart with a bunch of stuff like loaded on his cart. And he was already on the elevator, and a couple of us got on, and somebody was behind me trying to get on, and I go in, and he had, like, the guy with the cart had to rearrange so that everybody could fit, and he knocked something off of his cart, and it landed heavy and hard right up against his leg, like on the top of his foot. And the look on his face and the sound he made, oh God, it's like making me nauseous just thinking about it. It instantly, like, out of my knees, out of my elbows, and I looked at him, and I was about to cry because he was so hurt, and I was full of his pain. And the guy behind me, the a-hole that I worked with, he was like, God, come on, Carly, move it along, like giving me a hard time. And I'm like, this man is in pain. Like, are you okay, sir? And he was so, like, he was kind of older. I'm guessing like at least 65, if not 70. And he was so like not gonna make a scene out of his pain. He was gonna walk it off. He was gonna be tough and grit his teeth. And I'm like, God, your foot is probably broken. Like, it sounded so heavy. And it took seconds for me to even clear my own pain so that I could walk more onto the elevator. So like, I made a scene out of his pain. Poor guy. But yeah, like, it really makes me wonder, like, why do I have that? Why is that how my brain works? Why do I get shooting pains out of my knee when somebody gets hurt? Like, the youngest I can remember this happening, I was at my grandma's house, and I'm gonna say I was like 5 or 6 at the most. And we were sitting at her table and we were playing cards, which always was the case. And I like crossed my legs or like uncrossed my legs or something and accidentally kicked her in her knee. And I don't think either one of her knees are great, but one is worse than the other, and it was the bad one. And the look on her face, like, all the color drained out of her face, and she was like making these weird like choked back sounds, and like very, very clearly trying to like hold in the immense amount of pain that she felt. And the pain just exploded out of my knees and all over my body. And I just couldn't stop saying, I'm so sorry, Grandma. I'm so sorry, Grandma. I'm so sorry. And I start crying because I hurt her and I felt her pain, and I didn't mean to hurt her. Oh my God, I didn't mean to do it. I'm so sorry. And I just went on and on and on about that for so long. And again, she like is of that generation where she's not gonna accept my apology. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Like, no, it's not. I hurt you. I caused you pain, and I had to feel it too, and it freaking sucked. And oh my goodness. But yeah, that's interesting that like there have been multiple times where I'm more willing to admit the pain than the person who's actually in pain. And I don't know why I'm wired like that. But the day that I found out that that's a thing, that, you know, synesthesia is not in everyone. Like I said, it was me and my brothers all sitting at the table with my grandma after lunch one day playing cards or whatever. And I think she said something about pain coming out of her knees. And I confirmed like this, right? Like when you see somebody get hurt and it causes pain to shoot out of your knees. And she's like, oh yeah. And Ross, my brother that's just younger than me, he's like, oh yeah, definitely. And Jake and Sam, the younger two, are like, what are you guys talking about? Like, that's not a thing. That doesn't happen. I think you're crazy. Like, what? Like, they couldn't really wrap their mind around what we were talking about. And then here are my grandma, who's my mom's mom, and my brother, who's like 11 months younger than I am. We all know it. We feel pain when we watch other people get hurt. So that's again, going back to the genetics of it, I think it's fascinating. I also think it's fascinating that there are so many different forms of this, and that it's so ingrained inside of our normal that the synesthete themselves often doesn't even realize that they're doing it, because it's just their normal way of processing. It's their normal way of receiving information. And it takes a conversation hanging out after lunch one day randomly to bring this out into the light, to say, nope, that's not in everybody. That's not universal in how that works. So yeah, I wonder a couple of things like going back to the percentage of like how rare it is. I really doubt that it is, you know. I'll bet there are like 40%, 50% of us that have some kind of cross wiring in our brains that we think is normal, and so we don't ever say anything about it because I mean, we're not defective. Like this is where I was going to debate what they said in the explanation, and I just left out the word, but basically some places call synesthesia a disorder. And I'm like, is it though? Is it really a disorder? Because I know that mine, it brings my compassion to a level, my empathy to a level where it physically hurts me to witness pain. And so I know because of that, I take so much care and just precaution and awareness. I give so much energy to sidestepping pain and helping others feel better and easing pain, because when I'm around it, I feel it and it just hurts. And for so long, for like my whole life, you know, I found that when I was 25, 26, that was like right on the front end of my spiritual awakening, which would come basically that next year. And I I finally realized like, wow, like, you know, this is something that I've chosen to carry, that not all of us choose to have this, but I chose to have it. And I've spent so much time thinking, you know, from the standpoint of disorder. I think some might be able to make that argument because, you know, I watched somebody else get hurt and now I'm in physical pain. Like there was one of my friends, I forget which one, but like one of my friends a few years ago who was like, so do you think you'll be able to heal that? Like, and then you won't have to feel that pain anymore? Cause like, wow, yeah, that sucks. And I was like, does it though? Does it suck? Is it a disorder? Does it suck? I don't think so. I don't think it's bad. I think it's good. I think it's good that someone be so acutely tuned in to the pain that is being caused. And I'm very sensitive. I cannot tolerate that pain. And so therefore I point myself and I work towards a healing vibration. And I'm not saying the world needs that, but as far as like my soul and how it's pointed, I feel like my synesthesia and my ability to feel the pain of others is playing a huge role in just how deeply and how seriously I take this mission that my soul is on. I take it so seriously, in fact, that here I am making my 50th episode of telling these stories of cool things that I've learned. I was going to say, like, I wonder how many different people are out there with synesthesia that have no idea that synesthesia is even a thing. So I love that I'm bringing it out to there. Would love to hear in the comments if you have synesthesia, what's your form, which two senses are hooked up or multiple or whatever. Like, I think mine is basically that, like, things that I see and things that I hear can create physical sensations in my body, which typically your body would have to be impacted for those physical sensations to take place. So that is the form that I think I have, which I would think comes under that umbrella of mirror touch. But if anybody also finds something that's a closer match with what I've described, that, you know, a different name that might fit me better, I'm open to that too. I love learning stuff like this. I also wonder, like, before I knew synesthesia was a thing, I never could have imagined that synesthesia was a thing. So I wonder how many more things are out there like that, where we think it's normal, so we don't ever say anything. We think everybody has this way, so we don't ever say anything. And there's all kinds of things that are unique about the way that we're wired, and little ways that we can get to know ourselves better and take better care of ourselves. Because I know that I have to be mindful of exposing myself to painful things, because it does hurt and it usually catches me off guard and it'll take my breath away, and it's a painful few seconds waiting for that to pass. But in the moment when I do experience it, it's always interesting to me to witness my reaction to the person's pain compared to their reaction to their pain. It's just one of those things where, I'm an eternal student of human behavior, and I find it fascinating. But I love how it plays into my empathy and what I'm creating here, as far as I want others to feel as good as possible. Because here's the other thing, that like that synesthesia of when I hear things, when I see things, it creates physical sensations in my body. And the same is true on a positive end. When I see people glee ridden, it instantly, like, there's the same location in my knees and my elbows, but it's not a painful experience at all. It's almost like helium, where it like literally makes me feel like light and like I'm floating, and it is such a pleasurable sensation to see joy being like experienced by someone. So I love that I'm so tuned in and connected to that energy. And again, kind of like going back to the story at the beginning of, you've been run off the road. Now, how do you want to feel about it? Like, I have synesthesia. Like, this is the way that my brain is wired. This is what happens when I witness pain. I feel pain. And how do I want to feel about it? Do I want to feel like this is such an awful curse and I rail against it every time I feel it and I hate myself for it and I wish it was different? Obviously, that's not that's not the podcast we're on. So, it's a matter of loving it and seeing the divine purpose behind it. And what I was writing before that like really brought this. So, okay, yes, I was just doing some random journaling to get my love energy going, and it sounds like, I love the way my mind works. I love who I am. I love my free spirit and my willingness. I love my freedom and I love my choices. I love the way my life continues to unfold all around me. And the way my mind works, a big part of that is my synesthesia, is the way my senses are wired together. And it creates a unique experience where I am that much more connected to the world around me. And with that, I've chosen to look at that as like a richness in my experience, that, that's just that much extra information and guidance and ability to resonate with people that I come into contact with. And I have no doubt that that serves its own divine purpose with everything else that's in my toolbox. Like, there are a million things in my toolbox. There are so many things that I've learned and gifts that I brought with me that, we all bring our gifts with us, and then we learn stuff when we get here, and all of that is in our toolbox. And my toolbox is jam-packed, full of so many cool abilities that come together to make me me. And none of the things in that list were things that, like, none of it was really stuff that like I went out and said, I need to know this, so now I'm going to know this. Like, I wasn't forced. Most of it, like I said, some of it is just what I brought with me. Like, some of it is stuff that I'm just naturally analytical. I naturally come up with a lot of ideas. I naturally like public speaking. And like seeing those things that come naturally to me. And again, because I'm choosing to, I see them as my superpowers. And, I do work with people one-on-one, and so much of what I try to get out of our time together is to get them hooked up and confident in their own superpowers. And the hardest part of that conversation is getting them to believe that something that comes so naturally to them is actually their superpower. I don't know what it is, like maybe the word super or the word power for some of us. But something around that word makes us think that, we're going to go along and get bit by a spider, or we're going to go along and like pull a sword out of a rock, or, like whatever happened to Superman. I don't know. Like, we're going to go along, and that's where we're going to get our superpowers. And my philosophy is pretty different. My philosophy is more like, you were born with your superpowers, and your superpowers are the things that are so natural to you that you can't not do them. Like, synesthesia is one of my superpowers. I have no control over whether or not the pain is going to come out of my knees when I hear something painful. That's just going to happen. And I don't have to try. And that's my superpower. So that's a choice to let it be that easy. Like the whole, I have to seek it and I have to keep seeking it and I'm not there yet and all of that. Like, that lack-based mentality is really telling yourself, like, I'm not good enough yet. I'm not powerful enough yet. I don't have superpowers. Like, those are things that we say to ourselves that cut ourselves off from the gifts that we already naturally have and are using. And the only shift to like actually step into your superpowers is to choose to see them like that. So those natural abilities that come as easily as breathing, what are those for you? That's a fun list to take into your journal or put a big flip chart on the wall or whatever. And like, what are your superpowers? Or if you really can't get all the way to superpowers, maybe what are your gifts? What are your talents? What are you good at? What are you naturally good at? What comes really easily to you? Those are all kind of the same question. And really, whichever one of those questions feels the easiest to answer is where I would start. And work on seeing those things, those natural talents, those things that come really easily to you. See those as superpowers. Choose to see them as that valuable that you could deploy that gift and really help someone. Like I have a good example of someone close up to me who is an exceptional listener. And I tried to give her the spiel on her, like, listening is one of her superpowers. And she just couldn't. She's like, no, listening's so easy. Like, you just sit there and I'm not doing anything and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, oh, but you are. When you've talked to people who are bad listeners, you know the value of a good listener who doesn't jump to interrupt you every 5 seconds like I normally do, and who, like, when they respond, they demonstrate that they really heard you and that, they demonstrate that they've been tracking everything that you've said, and they offer like, and what about this? They add to the conversation with what they say. The being a good listener is absolutely a superpower, and it comes so naturally to her that she just doesn't think that it is. And that is absolutely seems to be the truth around our superpowers, is that we are usually the last ones to be able to see that we have them. To others, it gets easy. Like, it's easy for me to tell her that she's a really good listener because she's one of the best listeners I've ever talked to. And she only knows from inside her perception that this comes really naturally and it's easy. And, I don't want to interrupt her. I'm not trying to hold myself back. I'm just doing what comes naturally to me. And the effect is really nice. I mean, I walk away after every conversation with her feeling heard and seen and loved and tended to. And she creates all of that without really even speaking a word. And that is true strength. That is a superpower, if I've ever heard of one. So again, it really does come back to, like, how do we want to see it? How do you want to feel about the traits that are inherently yours? We're wired the way that we're wired. It is what it is. But you can get run off the road and feel pissy about it, or you can get run off the road and go have a lovely stroll through a garden center. So it's like that. It's like you can feel bad about it, or you can choose to accept it and maybe even embrace it, maybe even like run with it, maybe even see if you can capitalize on it. Like, my goodness, if you acknowledge your gifts, it gets so much easier to use them consciously and allow them to work for you in your life. Like, I think a lot of times, especially early on in my self-development journey, this was like in my younger years, so much of what I wanted was to fix my weaknesses. I felt so insecure about my weaknesses. And like, if I could just get better at these things, then I wouldn't feel this way. And really, the work that actually worked to help me feel better was focusing on my strengths and focusing on my superpowers and letting my superpowers help me through the things that I'm not naturally good at. Like, I'm not naturally good at listening, but I am very curious. So when I listen, I use my curious mind. I ask questions inside my mind and am delighted when so often the person answers them almost right away. Like, that's the game I play so that I can be a better listener. So, but all of that came because I embraced my curious mind. Not because I said I'm a terrible listener and I have to get better at this, because then I was just trying to like listen the way other people listen, or the way I thought they were listening, where you just like don't have any thoughts and you just take in what the other person says. And I don't know how they do that because my brain never shuts up. So I have to engage my brain even while I'm listening. And I do that by being curious and asking questions and making mental notes and trying not to run off in some tangent thought that comes up out of nowhere. But it's like that. It's like when we accept our gifts as blessings and things that, going back to maybe I plan to have synesthesia, going back to like, are these gifts on purpose? Did we bring the right gifts to do the mission that we set out to do when we incarnated into this lifetime? I think we did. I think we knew exactly what we were coming here for, and that we wired ourselves perfectly with the perfect superpowers and the perfect limitations, and that it's all working out beautifully for our highest good. Everything is always working out for all of us. And choosing to see it that way is probably the best gift I could ever give to myself. So to celebrate this 50th episode, I'm giving myself the gift of continuing to see this world as a beautiful place and to continue to buy into everything is always working out for me. That philosophy has brought me here to this place where I now have 50 episodes under my belt. And I do believe it's going to carry me far into the future. And that little tidbit I got completely for free. Everything is always working out for me. I didn't have to buy it. I didn't have to wrestle somebody else for it. I didn't have to take it away from anyone to have it for myself. I just claimed it. Everything is always working out for me. So I did want to close this episode with a little bit of gratitude here on this 50th episode. I wanted to take a second and carve out this bubble where life is good. Life is so good. It's flowing. I mean, I'm looking out my windows right now and it's a beautiful day. The earth is spinning in its orbit. All is well. The sun is shining. The crops are growing. The rains are coming. This world is producing everything that we need to survive, and then some. Like technology, like the technology that I'm using to record this podcast right now. I'm so grateful that our bodies will cough when there's something stuck in our throat and that it just naturally works itself out. Our body is a miracle, basically. I was going to say a medical miracle, but really it's just a miracle all by itself with the way that it functions. I'm so grateful that I have my emotions to guide me and to tell me when things are out of whack and when I've given my power away to external sources, and that emotional guidance leads me more and more and more back to my soul, back to myself, and what I've set out to do in this lifetime. It's easier and easier and easier as I go. I'm grateful for all of my tools, like my tarot cards that deliver messages to help me know that I'm on the right track. I'm so grateful for all of you who listen to these episodes and share this energetic space with me. I'm grateful for my own voice. Like, even right now, I still have the tiniest tickle in my throat. And if anything, it just makes me so grateful for how easy and clear my voice normally is. And this little bit of tickle, this little bit of contrast only clarifies how grateful I really am to to have my normal ability to do what I do. That speaking and sharing knowledge and all of that, like telling my experiences, is so satisfying. Having words, having language, having my tongue and my vocal cords to make all of these sounds, my lips to help make these sounds, like all of it, all of the pieces come together, all of the things that my soul set out to do, I brought all those pieces with me. And I'm grateful that I know that. I'm grateful that I choose to look at that way because it feels really, really good. And I mean, I also believe it about everybody else, but like I said, like we can only believe these things for ourselves or not. So I'm grateful that I know it. I'm grateful. Here's a really nice one. I'm grateful that I can know whatever I want that helps me to feel better without anybody else doing anything differently. Nobody else has to know what I know for me to know it and for me to be benefited by it. My knowledge benefits me, regardless of what anybody else is choosing for themselves. I'm so grateful that we're each individuals and that we each get to make our own choices about how we focus. And right here, I've spent the last few minutes focusing myself specifically into things that I'm grateful for, just because I know that focusing myself there will bring more things that I can be grateful for. So I know that that's a productive use of my time, and I'm grateful that I know that, and I'm grateful to Abraham for teaching it to me. I'm grateful for you all, most of all, I think, at this moment, for listening and for being here and for taking whatever you will take from the information in this episode and any of the other ones. I'm so glad you're here. And until next time, dear friends, you take such good care of yourselves, and so will I.